Today will be the day I end my marriage with you. David's voice cut through the laughter at my daughter's 18th birthday, like glass shattering on the floor. The cake knife froze in my daughter's hand as the room fell silent. Guests stared at me, waiting for the tears, the screaming, the collapse they were sure would come. My husband of 30 years stood tall, as if announcing the end of our family in front of our child was just another toast. I saw the smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. A chair scraped somewhere behind the crowd. She thought I would break tonight. They all did. But I had been watching the signs for months. I wasn't blindsided. I was ready. Everyone was waiting to see what I would do. I'll tell you everything. But first, thank you for watching Auntie May's Tales. Please subscribe and let us know where you're from in the comments. We may give you a shout out in our next video. Now, let me tell you everything. The room froze around me. Even the laughter died mid-echo, as if even the walls were ashamed to echo the sound of his voice. My daughter's eyes darted toward me, wide and panicked, searching for my reaction. I could feel every pair of eyes in that room drilling into my back, waiting for the storm they were sure would erupt. Tears, screams, maybe even a scene so big it would ruin Amara's birthday forever. But none of that came. I held myself still, my palms resting on the white tablecloth, fingers digging into the fabric just enough to keep me anchored. My lips curled into a faint smile, calm, steady, controlled, and inside 1,000 thoughts screamed through my head. So this is how he chose to do it. Not in our kitchen, not in our bedroom, not in private, but here, in front of our daughter, in front of family and friends. Why? Was it cruelty? Or did he think it would be easier for him if I had nowhere to run? I glanced at Amara again. Her hand still hovered over the cake, the knife trembling slightly. The candles flickered, wax dripping down the sides, like they too were waiting for someone to blow them out. My heart clenched at the sight of her. She was supposed to remember this day for laughter, for joy, not for her father's betrayal. Around us, the whispers began. They were low at first, but the sound spread like ripples in water. Did he really just say that? Here, at her birthday! I heard someone let out a nervous laugh, quickly stifled. The clinking of glasses had stopped. Forks hovered midair, plates forgotten. David remained standing, shoulders back, chin lifted, as if he had delivered a speech worthy of applause. That smug little smirk tugged at the corner of his lips, and I wanted to wipe it away with one sharp word. But I didn't. Not yet. He thinks he's won already. He thinks I'll collapse, that I'll make it easy for him to point and say, "See, she was never strong enough." He doesn't know I've been preparing for this. He doesn't know that while he was planning his escape, I was tracing every step he made. I caught movement at the back of the room. A woman shifted in her seat, trying to make herself smaller, invisible. Sheila. The name hissed in my mind like a snake. She kept her eyes down, fingers tangled in her napkin. Did she know he would say it here, like this? Did she think I'd fall apart in front of her? I pressed my shoulders back and breathed slowly through my nose. I had to keep steady. Every second of silence stretched into a lifetime, but I refused to give them the show they expected. Then Amara whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. "Mom?" Her voice cracked like thin glass. That single word pierced me deeper than David's announcement ever could. I turned to her, placed my hand gently over hers, steadying the knife. "It's okay, baby," I whispered back, just for her. "Keep holding on." Inside, though, I was unraveling. Memories of the last few months came rushing back. Fragments of moments I had pieced together like a puzzle no one wanted to see. The faint trace of perfume on his collar. Sweet, floral, not mine. The hotel receipts were folded clumsily in his jacket pocket. The way he tilted his phone away from me when it buzzed late at night. Thumb moving faster than usual across the screen. Each time I found one of those clues, I told myself, wait, don't confront him yet. Watch, listen, collect. Years of working as a nurse had taught me patience, had taught me how to observe without speaking, how to catch the details others missed, and so I did the same with David. I watched, logged, and let the pattern reveal itself. I tucked them all away in a folder I kept hidden, the weight of it growing heavier every week, and now, as he stood there in his pressed suit, wine glass still raised like he had made a toast to freedom, I thought of that folder waiting in my purse. My safety net, my weapon, my proof that I was not the fool he thought I was. The murmurs in the room swelled, tugging me back to the present. People were staring harder now, hungry for the scene, hungry for my humiliation. One woman covered her mouth, eyes wide with pity. Another leaned into her husband and shook her head slowly. They all thought they knew how this would go, but they didn't know me, not anymore. I straightened, lifted my chin, and let my eyes meet David's. His smirk faltered just slightly, as if he noticed the steadiness in my gaze. My silence unsettled him, and that gave me the first spark of power I had felt in a long time. Let them all wait. Let them all wonder. I won't give them the collapse they came for. What I give them will be something else entirely. The candles on the cake burned lower, wax spilling down onto the frosting. The room was still suspended, breathless. Somewhere in the back, a glass clinked nervously against a plate, and someone coughed. My fingers loosened from the tablecloth, and I folded them neatly in my lap. "I hear you, David," I said softly, my voice carrying just enough for the nearest tables to catch, loud and clear. He blinked, almost surprised I spoke at all. He expected sobbing. He expected rage. Instead, I gave him calm. Calm cut cleaner than any outburst. Inside, though, questions stormed. What will he do next? Will Sheila reveal herself, or will she hide in the shadows a little longer? Will Amara ever forgive him for choosing this night, her night, to tear our family apart? The only thing I knew for certain was this: I would not let him dictate the story, not tonight, not ever again. And with that thought, I reached for my purse. My purse rested against my leg, not the moment yet, but I hadn't pulled it out yet. Not here. Not while the air still buzzed with judgment. Instead, I folded my hands neatly in my lap and let the silence stretch a little longer. Then the voices started. They came in fragments, edging across tables. "What's she going to do now?" "She won't last a week without him." "Poor woman. She's never worked a real job since the kids were little." I kept my face still, but each word landed sharp and cold like needles under my skin. I could feel them sizing me up, their eyes sliding over my dress, my hands, my calm expression. To them, I wasn't a person anymore. I was a spectacle, a living cautionary tale unraveling in real time. A husband walking out, a wife too shocked to move. That was the story they wanted. That was the story David was counting on. But I wasn't going to give it to them. Inside, my thoughts tangled together. Do they think I've been blind all these years? Do they believe I didn't notice the nights he came home smelling like cologne that wasn't his? Or the sudden urgency to work late when I knew the office was half empty? Do they think I've just been cooking meals and folding laundry with my eyes closed? I watched David as he sat down, his smirk fading into something tighter, more uncertain. He didn't like silence. He wanted me hysterical, wanted the attention pulled to my collapse, not his cruelty. But I gave him nothing. Only stillness. Aunt Rose, sitting 2 tables over, leaned close to her friend. I caught the hiss of her voice. I always said he was too good for her. My stomach twisted. Aunt Rose had never liked me, not from the very first day. She thought David had married beneath him, and now in her eyes this was proof. But another voice cut through, softer, doubtful. "She's too steady. Isn't that strange?" The words barely reached me, but I clung to them like a rope. Yes, strange. Let them whisper that. Let them see something they didn't expect. I reached for my water glass, my fingers steady, though the ice clinked loudly against the sides when I lifted it. My throat was dry, but I forced myself to take a slow sip. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Sheila shift again. Her napkin twisted in her hands, tighter and tighter, until I thought the fabric might tear. She didn't want to be here. She hadn't planned for me to stay this calm. I wondered, did she know David would say it tonight? Did she push him into it? Or was she just as shocked by his need to humiliate me in front of everyone? Either way, she looked more like a trapped animal than a victor, and that gave me another small flicker of strength. The whispers grew bolder now, cousins who thought I couldn't hear them, friends who leaned across tables with pity in their eyes but gossip on their tongues. She'll have to sell the house. She doesn't have the money. He's always been the one keeping that family afloat. Each sentence was a stone added to the pile they were stacking on my back, daring me to collapse under the weight. But if there was one thing I had learned, it was how to carry more than anyone thought I could. I remembered the nights when the kids were little and sick with fevers, when I'd pace the floor with them in my arms while David slept soundly in the next room. I remembered balancing checkbooks at the kitchen table, stretching every dollar while he bought new suits and shiny watches. No one had noticed then. They only saw the man who smiled at parties and shook hands at church. But I had noticed. I had carried it all. And now, listening to their whispers, I realized they still couldn't see me. They saw a woman about to be abandoned. They didn't see the woman who had been preparing quietly for months. I let my gaze sweep the room, moving from face to face. Some looked away quickly, ashamed at being caught staring. Others held my eyes for a beat, curious, maybe even nervous. It struck me then, the power isn't in their whispers, it's in how I choose to answer them. David leaned toward me, his voice low but sharp. You should go before you make this worse. Embarrass myself. The words almost made me laugh. Did he think standing up at his daughter's birthday to declare the end of our marriage was dignified? Did he believe the shame was mine to carry, not his? I turned to him slowly, met his eyes, and whispered back, I'm not the one embarrassed. His jaw tightened. For the first time that night, I saw a flash of doubt cross his face. It was small, but I caught it, and it was enough. The waiter brought a fresh pitcher of water to the table, his hands fumbling slightly as if he wanted to escape the tension hanging in the air. He didn't meet my eyes. No one wanted to look too closely. It was safer to watch from a distance, safer to whisper than to stand beside me. But I didn't need them beside me. I had myself. Still, as I sat there, I couldn't stop the thought from pressing in. How many of them will believe him over me? How many already do? He had always been the charming one, the man with the easy laugh and the practiced handshake. I was the quiet one, the steady one, the background. Now, though, I had the chance to rewrite that. If I could stay steady, if I could hold my silence just a little longer. The candles on the cake finally guttered out, smoke curling into the air like a signal. Amara hadn't moved, her hand still on the knife. My heart ached for her. I leaned closer and whispered, Blow them out anyway, sweetheart. She looked at me, eyes brimming, but she nodded. One soft breath and the smoke rose higher, fading into the heavy silence of the room. In that moment, as the last wisp of smoke disappeared, I knew the night wasn't over. The real story hadn't even begun. Later that night, when the guests had finally drifted out and the house fell quiet, I found myself alone at the kitchen table. The smell of frosting still clung to the air, sweet but heavy, and crumbs of cake dotted the counter, a quiet mess after a loud night. My hands rested flat on the wood surface, steady now, but my chest still pulsed with the echo of what had happened. I thought about the years that had brought me here, the invisible labor, the things nobody ever saw but me. Bills spread across the same table, back when we couldn't make ends meet. Nights spent stitching together enough meals from what little was in the pantry, while David bought himself a new watch for work. I remembered driving an old car with a broken heater through icy mornings so the kids could get to school on time. He had always been the one in the spotlight, shaking hands, telling jokes, smiling for pictures. And me? I had been in the background, the quiet one, the dependable one. Nobody noticed the hours I worked, the sacrifices I made, the way I carried everything on my back so he could look untouchable. Sometimes I wondered if I was too quiet. Did my silence teach him to believe I'd never speak up? A memory surfaced, a church picnic years ago. David stood with a group of men laughing loudly, bragging about a business deal. One of the women nearby leaned in toward me and whispered, You're so lucky. He's such a provider. I had forced a smile, biting my tongue while thinking about the overdue electricity bill folded in my purse. Lucky. That word had felt like a stone in my mouth. And tonight, hearing the whispers again, I realized nothing had changed in their eyes. They still saw him as the provider and me as the dependent, but the truth was reversed, and I was the only one who knew it. I reached for my purse and slid out the folder. The manila edges were soft from being handled so often. Inside, a neat stack of papers, receipts from restaurants, hotel bills, and printouts of messages. Evidence. My secret ledger of betrayal. I had gathered it piece by piece, never sure if I'd have to use it, but knowing deep down this day would come. My fingers lingered on one receipt in particular. It was from a steakhouse across town, dated on the night he had told me he was stuck late in a meeting. 2 entrees, a bottle of red wine, and dessert for 2. I remembered that night clearly because Amara had been up late studying, and I had made her soup. He had come home past midnight, his tie still neatly knotted, as if it had never been loosened. I told myself then, don't confront him yet, not until you have enough. And so I waited. I collected. I built my case like a prosecutor building a trial. But now that I held the papers in my hands, a question clawed at me. When the time comes, will anyone believe me? Or will they believe him? With his easy charm and that smirk he wears so well. The thought made my stomach twist. It wasn't just about me. It was about Amara, about how she would see her father and how she would see me. Would she think I had failed to protect her? Or would she understand that strength sometimes looks like patience, not fury? I closed the folder and pressed it flat under my palm. The weight of it steadied me. This wasn't just proof, it was my shield. The refrigerator hummed softly in the background, the only sound in the kitchen. I stared at the faint scratches on the table's surface. Lines carved over years of family meals, homework, and holiday gatherings. Did any of those moments matter to him? Or were they just props in the performance he played for everyone else? A faint knock on the front door startled me. My heart jumped and I froze. It was late, far too late for visitors. I moved quietly toward the hallway, the folder clutched in my arms. Through the glass panel of the door, I saw a shadow. Tall, pacing, restless. David. I didn't open the door. I just stood there in the dim light, watching his figure shift. He didn't knock again. He just lingered, shoulders tense, hands shoved into his pockets. Then he pulled out his phone, the screen glowing on his face. He turned, pacing down the porch steps, and the sound of his voice carried faintly through the glass. He was calling someone. I strained to hear, pressing my ear against the door. One phrase slipped through. She didn't break. His tone was sharp, clipped, like he was frustrated. Then silence, followed by the crunch of his footsteps fading into the night. I stood frozen, my hand against the door frame. She didn't break. He wanted me broken. That was the plan. And now, because I hadn't given him the scene he wanted, he was already recalculating. My mind raced. What's his next move? How far will he go to make sure I fall? The folder in my arms suddenly felt heavier. For the first time that night, fear prickled at the edges of my resolve. But beneath the fear was something stronger, something steadier, a spark of determination. If he thought I was going to crumble, he had underestimated me. And with that thought, I turned off the kitchen light and walked upstairs, the folder pressed tight to my chest. The next evening, I sat at the dining room table again, but this time I wasn't alone. David had agreed to talk, though the way he said the word felt more like a warning than an invitation. He arrived in his pressed shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled just enough to make him look relaxed, casual, almost charming. That was his tactic. Pretend everything was normal until people believed him. Amara had gone upstairs, her footsteps hesitant on the staircase. She didn't want to hear, but she also didn't want to leave me. I could feel her fear radiating from the second floor, like static humming through the air. David slid into the chair across from me, leaned back and crossed his arms. His eyes flicked around the room as if he expected the walls themselves to nod in agreement with him. "You could have saved yourself a lot of embarrassment last night," he said. His voice was smooth, too smooth, like he had practiced it. Embarrassment, that word again. I felt it scrape against my ribs. "Is that what you call standing up at your daughter's birthday and announcing the end of your marriage?" I asked quietly. He shrugged. "Better to get it out in the open. Secrets rot everything, don't you think?" Secrets. The irony made me want to laugh. I let my fingers drift toward my purse resting on the floor beside me. I felt the weight of the folder inside, heavy, steady. "I do think secrets rot everything," I said. "Which is why I brought something for you." His brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" I reached down slowly, slid the purse onto my lap, and pulled out a large white envelope. My heart pounded, but my hands didn't shake. I placed it on the table between us gently, as if it were nothing more than a bill waiting to be paid. David's eyes narrowed. He didn't touch it right away. He just stared at it, suspicion clouding his face. "What is this?" "Something you should read," I said. My voice was calm, almost casual. "When you're ready." He smirked again, that same smug little curl of his mouth, but I saw the flicker behind it. His confidence had cracks. He reached for the envelope, but not with the easy arrogance he usually had. His fingers hesitated before they made contact, like he already knew it would burn. Inside, I was screaming questions. Will he recognize the hotel receipts right away? Will he see the dates circled in red and remember exactly where he was? Will he realize I've been watching, noting, gathering, while he thought I was blind? David tapped the envelope against the table, like he was stalling. "Is this some kind of trick? It's documentation." He slid his thumb under the flap but didn't open it. His eyes darted toward me, searching, testing. He wanted me to flinch, to beg, to explain myself. I didn't move. The clock on the wall ticked, steady and loud, filling the silence. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Amara shifting, listening, waiting. My chest ached, knowing she was caught in the middle of this battlefield. David set the envelope down without opening it. You've always been dramatic, he muttered. What do you think this is going to prove? That you can snoop? That you don't trust me? I leaned forward, my eyes locking on his. No, that you can't lie to me anymore. For a moment, neither of us moved. His jaw clenched. His hand hovered over the envelope like it might explode if he touched it again. And then, without warning, he pushed his chair back, the legs scraping harshly against the floor. I don't need to look at this, he said, his voice sharp now. I know what's in it. Your paranoia, your accusations. That's all you have. But I saw it. The flash of panic in his eyes, the way his shoulders stiffened. He knew exactly what was in there. Why won't he open it? Is it fear? Or is he already planning how to spin it, how to twist my evidence into his story? I didn't answer him. I simply picked up the envelope, tapped it against my palm, and placed it back on the table, closer to his side. It belongs to you, I said again. The air between us felt electric, charged. His smirk had vanished, replaced by something harder, sharper. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, the calculations shifting. He stood, grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair, and slipped it on with deliberate slowness. You think you're clever, he said, his voice low, dangerous. But this will backfire. People will see through you. I tilted my head, watching him. Maybe, or maybe they'll see you for who you really are. He froze for half a second, then turned and walked toward the door. The sound of it closing echoed through the house like a gavel striking. I sat there staring at the envelope left behind on the table. He hadn't taken it with him. He had left it sitting there, untouched, like a dare. My pulse thudded in my ears. Why would he leave it? Is he too afraid of what's inside? Or does he think ignoring it makes it less real? I reached out, pulled it back toward me, and slid it into my purse once more. Whatever his reason, one thing was clear. The game between us had just shifted. He knew I wasn't blind anymore, and I knew he was more scared than he wanted to admit. The house was quiet after David left, too quiet. The silence pressed in on me, heavier than his words, heavier than the envelope he had refused to open. I sat there at the dining table, the faint tick of the clock the only sound, until I heard a soft creak above me. Amara's footsteps. She came down slowly, her hand gripping the banister as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Her eyes were red, her face pale, but she held herself straight. I wanted to pretend she hadn't heard everything, that she had stayed safe in her room with music loud enough to drown out the world, but I knew better. "Mom," she whispered, her voice breaking. I opened my arms and she collapsed into them, sobs shaking her shoulders. Her tears soaked into my shirt, hot and desperate, each one a wound I couldn't heal. I held her tighter, stroking her hair, whispering soft words I wasn't sure I believed myself. "It's okay, baby. I've got you. We're going to be okay." But inside my head, doubt screamed louder than my comfort. How do I convince her of that when I don't even know what tomorrow looks like? How do I make her feel safe when her father just tore the ground out from under her? She pulled back, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. Why did he do this? Why here? Why now? Her questions sliced through me, each one sharper than the last. I wanted to protect her from the truth, but she deserved more than lies. Because he thought it would break us, I said quietly. He thought if he did it in front of everyone, we wouldn't fight back. Her lip trembled. But you didn't cry. You didn't even yell. I forced a small smile. Crying doesn't always mean you're weak. Sometimes it means you're stronger than they realize. Her eyes searched mine, and I knew she was trying to understand, trying to piece together what kind of strength her mother was made of. She was 18 now, no longer a child, but still young enough to believe that parents should be unshakable. I hated that David had stolen that illusion from her. We sat together for a while, the room dim except for the light above the sink, casting a soft glow. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the faint tap of branches against the window, ordinary sounds in a house that no longer felt ordinary. Finally, she asked, Do you still love him?" The question stopped me cold. Love. The word felt strange on my tongue now, foreign. I thought of the man I married, the man who used to bring me flowers on Fridays, who laughed with me in the kitchen, who held my hand when the children were born. I thought of the man who now smirked across a dining room table and left an unopened envelope like a challenge. I don't know if I love who he is now, I admitted. Maybe I just loved who I thought he was. Her eyes filled again, but this time she didn't cry. She just nodded, as if she understood more than I expected. We moved to the couch, sitting close. I wanted her to rest, to sleep, but she kept fidgeting, twisting her fingers together. "What's going to happen to us?" she asked. The U.S. in her voice broke me. She wasn't just asking about me and David. She was asking about her, about our future, about whether the ground beneath her feet would ever feel solid again. I reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. "We're going to make it through this," I said. "I promise you, Amara. He may think we're weak, but he doesn't know how strong we can be." She gave me a small, shaky smile. "I believe you, Mom." Her faith warmed me, but it also weighed heavily. What if I fail her? What if I can't protect her from what's coming? The thought clawed at me even as I kissed her forehead and told her to get some rest. She finally went upstairs again, her footsteps slow but steadier this time. I sat on the couch alone, the weight of the night pressing down. My purse was beside me, the envelope inside, silent but alive, like a heartbeat waiting to be heard. I pulled it out again, sliding the papers halfway free. The receipts, the texts, the transfers, they all stared back at me like witnesses. But one page caught my eye, one I hadn't looked at closely before. A bank transfer, larger than the others. Money pulled from our joint account, sent to an account I didn't recognize. My pulse quickened. Whose account is this? Is it Sheila's? Or is there someone else? The numbers glared up at me, bold and undeniable. A new question burned in my chest, hotter than the rest. What else has he been hiding? I couldn't sleep that night. The numbers on that bank transfer burned in my mind long after I turned off the lights. Every time I closed my eyes, the account string flashed in the dark like neon, foreign, unfamiliar, wrong. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my chest tight, the hum of the air conditioner filling the silence. Beside me, the space where David used to sleep felt cold, but it wasn't the kind of cold I wanted to warm again. It was the kind that seeps in, the kind that tells you something has already died. By morning, my decision was clear. If David thought he could move money behind my back, I was going to find out where it went. I had managed our bills for years, balanced every checkbook, and paid off every debt he pretended to handle. Numbers were my language. He might be clever at hiding affairs, but the ledger tells the story. I poured myself coffee, the bitter steam rising into my face, and spread the folder across the kitchen table. I pulled the transfer sheet closer, tracing the account number with my finger like it could confess something if I pressed hard enough. I recognized the bank. It wasn't ours, but I knew its branch downtown. My pulse quickened. Why would he choose that one? Did he think picking a different bank would keep me from finding out? I scribbled the number onto a notepad, tore the page out, and slipped it into my purse. My hands shook slightly as I zipped it shut. Fear and determination tangled inside me, but the determination was stronger. Driving downtown, I kept my eyes on the road, but my mind was elsewhere. Every red light felt like a test of patience, every turn a reminder that I had to keep moving forward. When I pulled into the parking lot of the branch, the sight of the glass building sent a shiver down my spine. Banks had always been places of control, order, and power. Today, I needed it to give me answers. Inside, the cool blast of air conditioning met me. The lobby smelled faintly of polished wood and paper. A row of chairs lined the wall, half filled with people tapping their feet or scrolling their phones. I walked to the counter, my heels clicking softly on the tile. The teller smiled politely. "Good morning, how can I help you?" I slid the piece of paper forward. "I need to know who this account belongs to. It's important." Her smile faltered. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We can't give out personal information about accounts unless you're the owner." I expected that answer, but disappointment still sank into my chest. Did I really think it would be that easy? I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. "Listen, I know you can't tell me outright, but could you at least check if this is a personal account or a business one?" She hesitated, glancing toward her manager. My stomach clenched. For a second, I thought she might refuse entirely. Then she sighed softly and tapped a few keys on her computer. "It's a business account," she said finally, her voice hushed. "Business." My pulse thudded. "Thank you," I whispered, pulling the paper back. I left quickly, not wanting to push my luck. Outside, the sun was glaring, too bright. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel, thoughts spinning. A business account? So what kind of business is he running without telling me? And who else is involved? The more I thought about it, the more the pieces clicked. The extra hours he claimed to be at meetings. The sudden interest in networking events I was never invited to. The new clothes, sharper suits, the way he practiced speaking in the mirror like he was preparing pitches. Has this all been about more than Sheila? Is there another secret life he's been building? Back home, I spread the papers across the table again, searching for more connections. My eyes caught another line I hadn't noticed before. Transfers recurring every 2 weeks, regular as a paycheck. The amounts weren't random. They were structured, deliberate. I sat back, breath catching. This isn't just him spoiling a mistress. This is funding something, something bigger. The sound of my phone buzzing startled me. The screen lit up with an unknown number. For a moment, I thought about letting it ring, but something in my gut told me to answer. Hello? There was a pause, then a woman's voice, low and uneasy. Is this David's wife? My grip on the phone tightened. Who is this? Another pause. I can't say over the phone, but you need to know he's not who you think he is. Meet me and I'll show you. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear, the dial tone humming. My heart pounded. Who was she? How did she get my number? And what does she mean he's not who I think he is? The folder lay open on the table. Papers spread like accusations. My whole body trembled, not from fear this time, but from the certainty that I had just stumbled onto a bigger truth than I'd ever imagined. The phone call replayed in my head all night, each word a drumbeat I couldn't shake. He's not who you think he is. By morning, I had made up my mind. Whoever she was, I needed to meet her. The risk of walking into a trap gnawed at me, but the bigger risk was ignoring her. What if she held the missing piece of the puzzle? We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop on the edge of town. Neutral ground. I chose a seat near the window, where I could see the parking lot and the street outside. My hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee, the steam curling up and fogging my glasses. I kept watching the door, every chime of the bell making my heart jump. Finally, she walked in. Mid-40s, plain clothes, no makeup. Not Sheila. Relief washed over me, but so did confusion. She scanned the room until her eyes landed on me, and she came over, sliding into the chair across from me without a word. Up close, I saw the tension in her face, the way her fingers tapped nervously against the table. "You're David's wife," she said. Not a question, just a statement. I nodded slowly. "And you are?" Her eyes darted around before she leaned closer. "My name doesn't matter right now. What matters is you need to know what your husband's been doing." A cold shiver ran through me. "I know about Sheila," I said, testing her. She shook her head quickly. "This isn't about her. This is bigger." Bigger? What could be bigger than an affair? My stomach clenched. She slid a folded piece of paper across the table. My fingers hesitated before touching it. When I opened it, I saw numbers. Bank numbers, dates, transfers. My breath caught. Amounts matching the ones I'd seen in my folder. "You've been tracking him too?" I whispered. She nodded, her lips pressed tight. "I used to work for him. He made me handle deposits, wires, and little things he thought I wouldn't question. But when I realized money was moving into an account under a different name, I started keeping copies." My pulse thundered. "Different name?" Her voice dropped lower. "A shell company. Not in his name, not in Sheila's either. He's funneling money somewhere else, somewhere he doesn't want you or anyone to see." I stared at the paper, the digits blurring for a moment. So it wasn't just about betrayal of the heart. It was a betrayal of everything, our home, our security, our future. I forced myself to ask, "Why are you telling me this?" Her eyes softened just slightly. "Because he did to me what he's doing to you. He lied, used me, and discarded me when I wasn't useful anymore. I can't undo what happened to me, but maybe I can stop him from destroying you too." Her words lodged in my chest, heavy and sharp. A strange mix of pity and rage rose inside me. David wasn't just careless, he was calculated. How many people had he hurt while he smiled in public, shaking hands and pretending to be the perfect man? I closed the paper slowly, folding it into my palm. "Do you know what he's planning?" She hesitated, then looked me dead in the eye. "I think he's getting ready to move everything. Once he does, you won't be able to touch it." The room tilted slightly, the sounds of clinking cups and hissing steam fading. "Move everything. He's already taken so much. If he empties what's left, what will Amara and I have?" I leaned back, forcing myself to breathe. My coffee had gone cold. I wanted to run home to double-check every account, but I held myself still. I needed to keep her talking. "What do you want from me?" I asked carefully. Nothing, she said quickly. I just want you to be ready. Don't trust what he says. Trust what the money tells you. Her words echoed something I had always believed. Numbers don't lie. David did, constantly, but numbers left trails he couldn't erase. She stood then, sliding her chair back quietly. Be careful, she added, her voice softer now. He's not just selfish. He's dangerous when cornered. Dangerous, the word clung to me long after she walked out, disappearing into the parking lot. I sat there staring at the folded paper in my hand. The digits stared back like a code I had to crack before it was too late. My chest tightened with fear, but beneath it was fire. If he thought he could dismantle me in silence, he had underestimated me again. I tucked the paper into my purse, paid for my untouched coffee, and stepped out into the sharp morning air. The sky above was clear, but inside me the storm was building. How much time do I have before he makes his move? Back home, the silence of the house pressed down on me like a weight. The hum of the refrigerator sounded louder than it should, the tick of the wall clock too sharp, as if marking every second I didn't have. I dropped my purse on the dining table and carefully laid out the folder, the receipts, the bank statements, and the folded slip of paper from the woman at the coffee shop. The paper edges scratched against each other like whispers I wasn't ready to hear. For a long while I just stood there, staring. My hands hovered over the mess of documents, afraid to touch them, as if they might burn. Then I forced myself to sit. My fingers trembled when I opened the folder. But once the papers lay spread out in front of me, something inside me steadied. These weren't just scraps. They were pieces of a story David thought I would never be brave enough to read. I grabbed a fresh spiral notebook from the counter, the kind I usually used for grocery lists. Tonight, it became my weapon. I drew 3 neat columns, dates, amounts, and suspicious names. Slowly, methodically, I filled them in. The numbers danced in patterns, circles forming where transfers repeated. One name leapt out at me over and over again, the same shell company. My pen hovered as I whispered it under my breath, tasting the bitterness of it. What are you hiding there, David? I rubbed my temples, exhaustion pulling at me. A small part of me wanted to shove it all back in the folder and pretend none of it existed. Pretend we were just an ordinary family again, with bills and chores and birthdays. But I had crossed that line the night he stood in front of everyone and declared my marriage over. There was no pretending now. My phone buzzed beside me, screen lighting up the darkened table. For a full minute, I stared at it, debating. Did I dare? Bringing someone else in meant giving up the last illusion of privacy. It meant saying out loud what I had only whispered in my own head. Finally, I scrolled to Lisa's number. She'd been a friend for years, someone I trusted, someone who had seen too many women like me stumble in with bruised hearts and half-broken stories. My thumb hovered over call. My chest tightened, then I pressed. She answered on the 3rd ring. Hello? Her voice was warm, familiar. Lisa, it's me. My throat felt tight, but I forced the words out. I need help. Legal help. There was a pause, then the rustle of her shifting. Is this about David? Of course, she already knew. Everyone in town knew pieces of it. The whispers about him at the diner, the sideways glances at church. But nobody knew the whole story except me. Yes, I whispered. But it's worse than people think. I have proof he's moving money, hiding it. I think he's trying to strip everything before he walks away. Her voice lowered, steady and sharp. Bring me everything you've got. Don't tell him you called me, and don't wait. The longer you wait, the more he'll take. When the call ended, my hand shook as I set the phone down. But inside, a knot loosened. For weeks, I'd felt like a woman drowning, gasping while everyone else just watched. Tonight, for the first time, I reached out for a rope. I gathered the papers into neat stacks, sliding them into a binder. I labeled each section, receipts, transfers, and personal notes. With each plastic sleeve I filled, I felt a strange power stirring. The binder grew heavier, not just in weight, but in meaning. It wasn't just paper anymore. It was ammunition. And yet, under that thin layer of power, fear gnawed. If David finds out I'm doing this, what will he do? He had always controlled with charm, with a smile sharp enough to cut, but I had seen flashes of something darker behind his eyes, something that made the tiny hairs on my arms rise. Later that night, I made my rounds of the house, checking locks I had checked 100 times before. But this time, when I reached the back door, my breath caught. A thin scratch marked the frame, fresh, the paint still curling. I touched it lightly with my fingertip. The wood felt raw. A shiver crawled up my spine. Was this from him? Had he tried to come back while I was gone? Or was it just a branch in the wind? I double locked the door and stood there for a moment, staring at my own reflection in the glass, eyes tired, jaw clenched. Upstairs, Amara was already asleep, the soft rhythm of her breathing spilling through the cracked door. I lingered there, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest. She was the reason I couldn't afford to fall apart, the reason I was sitting at that table with papers and fear instead of burying my head under a pillow. I whispered to myself, "He won't take this from us. Not this time." Back downstairs, I pulled out the folded slip of paper again, running my thumb over the digits of the hidden account number. The words of that stranger at the coffee shop echoed in my head. "He's dangerous when cornered." And suddenly it hit me. I wasn't just cornering David. I was stepping into the same corner with him. The courthouse smelled like old wood polish and dust, familiar yet suffocating. Every sound echoed, the shuffle of shoes against marble, the murmur of lawyers huddled in corners, the occasional slam of a heavy door. I sat stiff on the bench outside the courtroom, binder clutched so tightly in my lap that the edge pressed into my ribs. Lisa sat beside me, composed as ever, flipping through her notes like this was just another day at work. For her, maybe it was. For me, it was the day everything broke, or everything began. The door swung open. David entered with his lawyer, a man young enough to be my daughter's age. David wore his best suit, the one he usually saved for Christmas service, but his tie was crooked and sweat dotted his forehead. He scanned the room until his eyes landed on me. For a second, his lips twitched upward, that same smug smirk I knew so well. But it didn't last. Something in my gaze made it falter. When the bailiff called us in, my knees wobbled, but I forced myself to stand tall. I wasn't walking in as the wife he tried to humiliate at our daughter's party. I was walking in as a woman who had prepared, who had proof, who had found her voice. The judge entered, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, her gavel slamming once. "Court is now in session." David's lawyer went first. His voice cracked slightly as he tried to paint the story. A misunderstanding. A man simply managing finances in his own way. Nothing sinister. "There is no concrete proof of wrongdoing," he said, flipping through his thin stack of papers. "Just assumptions." I wanted to laugh. Assumptions? He had no idea what I carried in my binder. Then it was Lisa's turn. She stood, her heels clicking against the floor with a confidence that made me want to cheer. She began laying out the evidence. Bank transfers, suspicious withdrawals, hidden accounts. Each page she handed the judge was another stone stacked on David's back. The room grew quieter with every document revealed. I watched David's posture shrink. Inch by inch, he started shifting in his chair, tugging at his collar. The sweat on his forehead trickled down his temple. Then came the moment I had waited for. Lisa pulled out the marriage agreement David had once forced me to sign. She read it aloud, her voice clear, the clause that punished infidelity. I remembered the night he shoved it in front of me all those years ago, telling me it was just protection, just business. He had no idea he was carving his own trap. The judge leaned forward, scanning the pages. Her eyes narrowed. "Mr. Johnson, this agreement is binding. By your own signature, you agreed that infidelity results in forfeiture of marital assets. Combined with the evidence of financial misconduct, this court has no choice but to rule against you." Her gavel struck. The sound was deafening, final. David jerked upright, face red. "This is outrageous! She set me up!" His voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. He turned toward me, eyes blazing. "You think you've won? You think this is over?" For a heartbeat, fear tried to claw at me. But then I remembered the scratch on the door, the whispered warning, the way Amara's breathing had steadied me. I straightened my shoulders and met his gaze. "It's been over for a long time, David. You just didn't see it." The judge banged the gavel again, silencing him. Outside the courthouse, the sunlight hit me like a blessing. Warm, almost too bright, as if the world had been waiting to remind me there was still life beyond his shadow. People bustled past, but I stood still, breathing in air that tasted sharper, freer. Lisa touched my arm. "You did it!" I shook my head. "We did it, thank you." When I returned home, Amara was waiting at the kitchen table, textbooks pushed aside. She stood the moment I walked in, searching my face like she'd been holding her breath all day. "Well?" she asked. I smiled, small, weary, but real. "It's done. The house is ours. The accounts are safe. He can't take it from us. Her eyes glistened and she threw her arms around me. Mama, you actually did it. I held her tight, my throat burning. For months I had carried the fear of being powerless. Tonight that fear was gone. Not because David was ruined, but because I had finally learned to stand. Later that evening, alone at the same dining table, where I had once stacked his receipts like puzzle pieces, I ran my hand across the smooth surface. The binder sat closed now, its job finished. I didn't need to open it anymore. I thought back to the night of the party, the way everyone had waited for me to cry, to crumble. Instead, I had walked away. They thought it was weakness, maybe cowardice, but it had been the first step in a plan that ended here, with me still standing and David stripped of everything he thought he owned. He thought humiliating me in front of our daughter would be the end of me, but he forgot. I had been surviving storms long before him. Now, for the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was free. And as I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, I whispered to myself the words I had been too afraid to say aloud until now. This isn't an ending. This is my beginning. My name is Nkaruka. I am 53 years old, and I've learned that strength isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about knowing when to stand tall and fight for your own worth. David thought taking my dignity would end me, but it only reminded me that my value has never depended on him. True love, freedom, and respect begin with the way we choose to honor ourselves, and with that, her story comes to a close. If this touched your heart, please give this video a like. It really helps more people find stories like Nkaruka's. Don't forget to subscribe to Auntie May's Tales so you won't miss the next story, and share your thoughts with us in the comments. What about you? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to reclaim your strength or dignity in the face of betrayal? We'd love to hear your experiences and reflections. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for being part of this family. Until next time, take care of your heart and never forget your worth.